Modern Eater Network production. Hell yeah. Let's get this party hopping. No more milling around. Get ready to have a mash ton of fun. Here are your hosts, Andrew Moore and Jeff Tyler.
All right, welcome to Beercraft, Colorado's craft beer show. This is week 3, episode 4, Beercraft live from Studio Kitchen, Colorado, home of the Modern Eater Network. I'm your co-host Andrew Moore from Intrepid Sojourner Beer Project, and with me is Jeff Tyler from Spice Trade Brewing. The theme of the month, for those of you who've been keeping up, is Stout. So every week, we've been coming at you with a different theme on Stout. You can check out our old episodes on Facebook. We started with History of Stout. Then we had a technical brewing episode with Stout.
Yep.
Last year, feels like last year.
It does. It's been a long month.
It's been a long month. Last week we talked about brewing with adjuncts.
Yep.
We talked to some coffee people, some spice people, and this week, maybe my favorite week, because the food is the best this week, is beer and food.
Yeah.
So beer and food, so specifically Stout and food.
Right.
So here with us today, we have Chef Chito Arreola from Las Delicias Uptown and Chef Chris Starkus from Urban Farmer Denver and Lost Creek Microfarm. So welcome.
Welcome to the show, guys.
Thanks for having us. And I'm excited that we finally get to use the kitchen.
I know we've been doing the show out of a kitchen for the last 3 weeks, and we finally get to kick on the burners. Now, you guys can't smell right now, but we got some great smells going on in the kitchen right now. We got some thyme, we got some butter melting, some really cool things. We're going to cook a couple. Well, we're not going to cook a couple things. So I guess I'm a big fan of beer and food pairings. We do a lot of beer and food pairings, a lot of dinners at Spice Trade. We actually have our own blog on our website, and we post recipes every month or so, different beer paired with different food. But we get to bring the pros in today to cook some really cool items for us. We're going to have 2 different dishes. One of them we're going to pair with the beer, and one of them we're going to actually infuse a beer into the dish itself. So why don't we bring you guys on, chat a little bit about what you're going to prepare and what we're going to pair it with.
Okay.
Chito, you want to start?
Yeah. Entree first, then dessert.
Yeah, let's do that.
Yeah, so.
Oh yeah. Okay.
Right.
We're basically going to do a ribeye. We're gonna pan sear it in a cast iron pan, which gets that nice crust on there.
Nice.
And then finish it with a stout butter. So we'll pair it with a stout as well. But I think like making a stout butter kind of brings that bitterness to the profile, which I think sometimes chefs forget that sometimes, and it's not the most exciting one to bring to the table because most people are turned off when you say the word bitter. But I think it's going to pair very well with the fat and the ribeye today to that point, if you will.
Yeah, awesome. That sounds great. I'm excited to kind of see that butter layer into kind of like the crispy charred caramel flavors that develop on the steak, and then tie that back into drinking with the beer.
Absolutely.
That's going to be fun.
Me too.
Nice.
And then for dessert, we're going to have a choco flan, which we did a flan episode yesterday.
Yeah.
And that was good. I tried it. It was delicious.
Yeah, so we're going to pair that with the chai milk stout.
Yep. Chai milk stout. And then I made a little stout butter sauce.
Oh, nice.
That's going to go on the bottom for your caramel sauce.
Nice. That sounds good.
So it's actually pretty good.
Awesome. Yeah, Chito, why don't you guys kind of just to give our viewers an understanding of kind of who you are, what your background is in the culinary world, and the restaurant you're working for right now.
Currently working for Las Delicias. There's 5 restaurants here in town. I'm doing the whole corporate thing there for them, trying to keep all 5 kitchens running, same direction. And a little bit of my background, just working for big catering company throughout the States. Done some 4 Super Bowls, Derbies, U.S. Open, NASCAR, whatever sporting events you do.
Really
see
big
on
events.
TV. Yeah. And then went to Africa and was living in Africa for 2.5 years. I was the private chef for the president of Gabon.
That's awesome.
West Africa. I was out there it was a really cool experience out there.
Nice. How long were you out there for?
2.5 years.
2.5 years?
Yeah.
Wow.
So that was, we had to travel with him, on his presidential trips to, I think we visited over 34 countries with him. So, and then drinking beer all the time,
I like it.
All you do is drink beer from different countries.
Yeah. We're gonna talk about that in a lot more detail coming up here in a little bit. Chef Chris, why don't you give a little background on yourself so everyone knows where you come from?
Absolutely. So I'm originally from Southern California. Went out to Vegas. I was in Vegas for about 12 years, cooking through all sorts of restaurants of the Strip, fine dining and everything. Wolfgang Puck, those guys. Went up to Portland, Oregon, actually, as a private chef. I worked for a prominent family in Oregon for about 2 years, and also managed their estates as well.
Nice.
And then from there, got back into the restaurant side of it, kind of like you went back and forth, right?
Yeah.
Got back on the restaurant side and started with the urban farmer out there with Sage Restaurant Group. And that's where I started beekeeping and doing some rooftop gardening as well. And that's kind of where the whole urban farmer, as far as I was considered, came together. And so when I came to Denver, I tried to put that all together in what you're seeing on the plates at Urban Farmer downtown. So we're right next door to the Oxford Hotel on 17th and Wazee right there. We've been open for about a year and a half. And so my team and I just really try to bring as many seasonal delights. Of course, meat, seafood as well, but also some things from my farm, as Andrew mentioned earlier, Lost Creek Microfarm. We're planting a lot this year, really from seed to put on the menu for late spring and early summer, and then of course some more beer collaborations and things like that coming this year, which I'm excited about.
Yeah, that's going to be a lot of fun because you're growing ingredients specifically for certain kitchens. I know you're working with some breweries. We're working with you. Andrew's working with you on some really cool ingredients. So having like locally grown produce kind of to order.
Well, we'll actually be back here in a couple of days on Saturday at 6 o'clock for the Modern Eater.
Right.
And Chris and his team will be cooking up sounds like a storm of food.
Yeah.
Yeah, we got 3 courses planned. Yeah.
3 courses.
Yeah.
So we'll be back here gorging and eating and talking on Saturday, and we'll be talking about some of those beer collaborations that we just mentioned then. But one of the things that I like about like going to Urban Farmer is that like if you go downstairs or if you look out the window, like they have things growing in the restaurant.
Yeah.
They have showcased the local suppliers where they're getting their ingredients. I mean, sort of like one of the things we've been trying to do with this show, right, is take the lens off of just glass of beer on the bar to the consumer and talk about the industry and the culture and the economy that goes into producing that glass of beer. So it's fun to see that reflected.
Yeah, and I think a lot of people kind of go out to eat and have a good time and go home and kind of forget that there's a crew of not only a crew of amazing people behind the scenes in the back of house cooking that stuff for you, but also a range of suppliers, agricultural suppliers and farmers that are required just to get those ingredients to the chefs who can make the food for the people. And when you see it growing, where you're actually eating the food, it kind of takes that veil off and makes you connect the dots a little bit more.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's telling that story of where your food comes from is coming more of a prominent story, like you said. I mean, whether it's food or beer or wine, or for that matter, and being able to what I call it kind of like passive preaching. Like you see it in the restaurant, like you were talking about. It makes you ask questions that you may not ask before. And of course, our staff is knowledgeable about all those farms and whatnot. We get them.
Yeah, it's hard to do. I mean, it takes a lot of education on the staff's part, on your part, to convey all that information to everybody who comes in and just wants a steak.
Yeah,
100%.
Yeah, it's sort of like breweries, though. Breweries kind of have that window where you can see some of the equipment, and it kind of invokes some of those questions, like, oh, what does that tank do? What does this tank? What do you mean you make your own beer here?
Yeah.
And so you're kind of taking that similar approach to food.
Absolutely.
Although I think it's just like we spent all this money on shiny stainless steel. Some of it comes from us. We just want you to know that we have it.
Yeah.
Like a little glass.
It's a
of
vain
there.
thing for brewers.
Yeah.
There's probably a little bit of vanity involved.
There is some stuff with chefs, too. I mean, you see some stainless in a kitchen, you're like, ooh, that's a nice kitchen.
Yeah.
Those guys got some stainless stuff there.
Absolutely.
Some copper pans. We got some copper pans over there on the table.
We do.
That all
Awesome. Well, we got a great show lined up today. Chef Chris, we're going to let you get started because you got some cooking to do.
Jump to it.
So we're going to let you get to that, and we're going to come and pick your brain about what you're working on in a minute here.
So I want to know more about being a private chef to the president of a small African country. I mean, because it sounds amazing. Like
It's really
it's a good
cool.
thing they don't need private brewers, or I'd probably do something else.
Sign you up, right?
Yeah.
No, man, it was a really cool thing to do. I got a phone call at 5 in the morning. A number this long on my phone. I was like, where's this from? And I'm like, ignored it. Then again, call me again. I was so hungover that morning. He's like, hey, I got a job for you. This is so-and-so. I got your contact from this lady and this guy, and I want you to send me your resume and passport and everything. Do you want the job? I'm like, wait, hold up. What's the job? It's going to be a private chef for a person in Gabon. Very important person. Oh, cool. And then I called the lady, Diane de la Cruz. She's the executive chef at the Dolphins in Miami. She's like, hey, so you should take this job. It's going to be for a very high-profile person. It's going to be really cool. You should do it for a year. All right, that sounds good. So 30 days later, I was in Gabon. So we got there. Didn't even go through customs, nothing. It was just like, all right, get off the plane, there's a limo.
Yeah.
That's your driver.
Wow.
And then we met another chef went to pick us up, and then HR director, he was there too, to do all the paperwork and everything for us. And as soon as we got there, you guys are residents, you guys are citizens of the country, and because they didn't want to mess with the whole visa and stuff, so they just made us citizens right away.
There you go.
Second day in Gabon.
Wow.
And, so we had to do, there was 6 of us, 6 chefs, and I was the only one from this side of the world.
Wait, there's 6 chefs for one person? Is
I
that
mean,
right?
well, you feed like
I imagine
probably
it's-
100 people.
There's an entourage.
You
Other
know,
members of the government. Yeah.
everybody there
Awesome.
that go there. And then when you're on the plane, you got a little kitchen, about 15 by 15, a little square. And you got, your stove and everything. So when the president wants to eat, then you go in the kitchen and start cooking on the plane.
Yeah.
And then you would go to whatever presidential palace, whatever country we were at.
Yeah.
And then just cooking for the other president and your president. That was a cool thing about just collaborating with different chefs from different countries. He would teach me his cooking and, show him a little bit of a...
So when you're cooking these meals, does the president come up and say, hey, I want this?
Yeah.
And you just make it for him? Or sometimes she's like, I'm not sure what I want, and you kind of make something that you think he would like? Or how does that usually work?
Like, we'll talk to a nutritionist. They have a nutritionist there, too. And she's like, we need to cook this stuff, but... he gets out of line. He's like, hey, let's get some wings. Let's do some avocados and guacamole and, fajitas. He loved burgers. Yeah. So one day he wanted to bring Alaska wild salmon. I was like, all right, cool. So, but I want it fresh. So it cost us $5,000 to get 2 fish from Alaska to
Do you have a
Gabon.
budget when you're
No,
cooking for
there's
president,
no budget.
or they're just like,
it's
buy
just
that?
whatever.
Yeah.
It just we need this, we need that, and it was.
So that must be a big
It was
difference
really
from
cool.
working in a restaurant
Trying to keep your
where
food
you're keeping your food costs low versus someone who's just, I want Atlantic salmon tomorrow or right
and
now.
then you can get it. I mean, you have to get it.
Yeah.
They eat. He likes sushi. He likes really spicy food. So we were chopping habaneros in all his food.
Yeah.
So it was really cool. I mean, just getting to travel through all these countries, it was sick.
Yeah. Well, I imagine you learn a ton about different cuisines, like you said. You're cooking with different chefs from all over the world. Right. You're learning from different cuisines. You find that you're sort of using that now as you...
Oh, yeah, for sure. For sure. I'm always I'm not afraid of using other spices, and as you grow in the kitchen, your cooking matures too.
Yeah.
And then, before, you just want wild things, like food this high and, 50, 20 spices in a sauce or something. And now it's just kind of well, I'm not afraid to use cardamom on a steak, or fajitas or something. Just that little, it makes you less afraid of cooking. You just feel hey, I can mix all these other spices that from all over the world onto this burger or this Mexican dish that I want to do. So that was really cool. Just learning to taste all the spices and street food from all over the country. So
nice. Imagine not a lot of beer dinners.
Oh yeah,
for the president. No.
No. All they do is champagne and
Champagne.
Yeah. Really expensive wine bottles.
Yeah.
Yeah, so they're not. He needs to come over to Colorado and try the beer.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
They do that now, high-end travel vacations to Colorado.
Oh, really?
For breweries.
Yeah.
Yeah. Do fancy beer dinners.
Yeah, we got to get on that list.
Yeah, we
absolutely.
should do that.
Yeah.
We should have a dinner.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. Nice. Well, let's kind of talk about flavors a little bit. We're talking about food and kind of some of these exotic spices from different parts of the world, different culinary traditions that you've used. I kind of want to tie the culinary aspect of things together with some of the flavors you find in beer, because that's one of the things that we're really trying to do when you're pairing beer with food, or when you're trying to incorporate beer with food. You kind of have to think about it on a level of flavors, right? So, the two things that we have today, the thing that Chef Chris is working on is kind of tying stout and the bitterness of stout into one of the ingredients, right, into the butter. But I like how he's kind of layering that roasted or charred flavor throughout the dish, right? So you kind of have it in the butter, you have it in the steak, and if you're pairing it with a stout, you have it in the stout too, right? So it's kind of layered throughout the dish. And I think, there's a lot of different dishes from all over the world that work well with this. The dessert, people normally think dessert,
Sure.
right? That's
Yeah.
what we talk about all the time. People want to
stout.
pair stouts with desserts.
7-layer chocolate cake. The more decadent, the better.
Right.
Yeah.
Because stout is kind of seen as this dessert item, but I think it has a lot more versatility, right?
Well, with the stout beers have been kind of spreading out and incorporating more things,
More
than just sort of
ingredients,
like the coffee
like-
and chocolate.
It's like
flavors.
the jalapeno one that you have there. That's
Right, the jalapeno pilsner,
Yeah.
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 That's delicious, dude. I mean, and I could pair that with fish or something light that brings up the flavors that you have with the jalapeno and the what was the other spice that you have on there?
The pilsner's got the jalapeno in it, and then the milk stout has the chai spice in it.
Yes.
Yeah,
So
yeah.
What I wondered, maybe our chefs can tell us, because I know you've been a big proponent of this since the whole time I've known you, is this idea of that when you're incorporating a flavor into beer, say you have pumpkin, right, that you basically incorporate those flavors at different points in the process, right?
Right.
And maybe different pieces of the pumpkin. So you've got maybe you've got some roasted skin in the mash, maybe you've got some pumpkin puree in the boil, maybe you've got some spices in the fermenter.
Right.
And the perception is that creates kind of a deeper,
layers.
more of nuanced, layered flavor.
yeah.
I'd be what is that something that you
Oh
guys
yeah,
think
for
about?
sure
Absolutely.
too.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, you gotta have different layers of food. Like flavors on your food. You can't just do, steak like he's doing with salt and pepper. That's why he's adding the butter, the stout butter.
Yeah.
That's why he's gonna do some rosemary. So you got different layers on your steak, your even your vinaigrettes too. When you taste it, you just taste. You might get the balsamic first, and then the olive oil at the end. You can taste some spice if you add some spice to it. But it's all different layers of in the cooking too. So you want to plan that out.
Yeah. And when you're cooking too, a lot of times you're kind of tasting as you go, right? You want to make sure that the flavors are what you want. So you're going through, you're adding a little more of this, you're adding a little more of this, trying to balance it out a little bit, right? And we do that. I mean, I do that with beer too.
I was just gonna say that. How do you guys do that? Manage that?
It's the problem
Flavor.
is it takes a lot more time than with because you take it takes maybe at the minimum 4 days for a certain ingredient to infuse, and so you got to wait those 4 days, and then you can taste it and be like, it needs a little more, or maybe it was a little bit more than I wanted. What can I do to balance that out? So the time scale is stretched out a lot more compared to food where maybe you're seasoning something like a little more salt, a little more pepper, a little more sage, a little more rosemary, a little more thyme. So the time scale is shifted out a little bit more, especially with things that ferment out. If you have sugars that are going to ferment out, it's going to taste sweeter when you first add it in. And then if you give it a week, it's going to eat all the yeast, are going to eat all the sugar, and then it's going to totally change the profile. So maybe only you have the acid from an acidic fruit like a raspberry versus the sweetness.
Okay.
So that's kind of a tricky thing, is projecting how it's going to change,
Right. Yeah.
and timing it right.
I mean, because that's one of the things we found with producing a perishable product, and it's all of those different ingredients, like the individual spices in the chai spice blend have different sort of shelf lives in terms of flavor profiles. So if you release a beer with a complex flavor profile, right, the cardamom might be super prominent for 2 weeks, right, and then the anise starts to become more prominent for a week or so,
Right.
and then the cinnamon becomes more prominent. They
interesting.
there may be a point where they kind of all are hitting on all cylinders.
Yeah, the
all
sweet
the
spot.
time.
That's the best.
It's like a
That's the
sweet
best day
spot.
to drink the beer.
But it's never long enough.
Yeah. I mean, we talked about this a couple episodes ago, that beer is a perishable product. And it has that lifespan, but the ingredients, they change with time. So I think kind of getting that message out there that beer is perishable. It's not something that's going to sit in your basement for 10 months and taste the same day one and month 10. Drink it fresh and understand it's alive.
With food, and I just think of it all as being condensed, right? I'm sure you guys think of, you're thinking of serving temperatures, you're thinking of how fast is it getting to the table. All of these things are going to affect the flavor profile of the dish when the person actually takes that first bite. If they sit there and talk for 30 minutes before trying the food.
Right.
All of these sort of variables that go into the making a perishable product.
Right.
Yeah, I think all of minute is like a term that we use. Basically, up to the minute is a term, and so the faster you're plating it up, and getting it out to the guests is exactly that. That's like the height of hopefully what that dish is, and then going down from there. But I haven't heard it talked about through beer that way, and I guess I'm learning that brewers are probably a lot more patient.
Oh yeah, for sure.
Than chefs.
Out of necessity, I'll tell you that.
Necessity,
I want things done now.
Yeah.
I'm like very impatient person, so like out of necessity, you kind of have to be like, this needs time to do its thing, and
Just imagine, dude, like these guys when they're brewing, they do one mistake, it's gonna be that whole 500 gallon tank. Not like us. We burn a steak, all right, whatever. Put it on the side. Maybe someone's gonna order a well done steak later, and then we'll use it later. But not these guys. What if you put too much spice on your
that's hard.
tank?
I mean, that's something I think we both found is like you could sort of kind of ease into it, right? And often people are kind of blown away by the amount of spice that we'll use. I mean, so we'll do roughly 220 gallons of beer at a time, right? So our lavender triple uses between 4 and 6 ounces of dried lavender, right? It's like not even quite a handful.
Yeah.
220 gallons. More than that, and it just tastes like soap. And so, but people are like they expect a bag, right?
Yeah.
right. Spices go a long way, a
Yeah.
surprisingly long way.
That's
With
what I
our
was gonna say. I think that's important as far as like sourcing, like we were talking about earlier.
Yeah.
I know as a chef, you especially an urban farmer with steaks and fish like that, when you're sitting down, you actually know where it's coming from and the producer and why you get that most of that flavor out of it. And again, going back to the farm, that same type of thing. Where if I know I'm specifically growing it, it's that fresher. Versus something that's maybe been sitting on the shelf for a while, so knowing that producer where it comes from is very important, especially as people taste it, because you can tell the story all you want. It needs to come through to the guest who's buying it or whoever's drinking it.
Yeah, it's true, very true.
Yeah. So it smells amazing over here. So I feel like we should find out what's been going on.
Yeah.
I mean, this is a simple preparation. Basically, we just started out with a little bit of just some julienne onions so they cook quickly with a little bit of chopped fresh thyme. And then just added in some stout. So we're going to reduce that down right now. It will get a little bit of bitterness from that, but we'll reduce out the alcohol and kind of make like a paste, if you will. And then from there, we're going to move it to the food processor and add in a room temp butter. So when you can just leave butter out overnight just to get up to room temp, as if you're making cookies or something like that, same type of thing. And then we're going to blend that up, add in that butter, and then you have a compound butter, flavored butter, however you want to say it. And then putting that in the fat over the steak is going to be where we want it to be. So we're getting there. I want to reduce this most of the way down, not only just for the extraction of the flavor, but also for the density of the butter that I'm looking for, and then we'll sear off the ribeye here in a minute, actually.
So kind of talking about herbs and spices, how do you figure out how or when to put in the thyme, right? Some herbs are more volatile than others, so how do you find that right time without cooking off all the flavor?
I mean, generally you're talking fresh and or dry. So generally, if you're going to add it in for a long time, i.e. a roast, a brew, or something like that, you want to use the dry for the extraction of it. This is going to be a quick cook within the hour. Anytime you're making a stock, you're going to use fresh ingredients. So that's the main guideline we go with. And then, of course, depending on the intensity of the herb or spice that you're talking about. So kind of like what you guys, sometimes you're trying it, you're tasting it, and you say, okay, I want it this way or that way, to again, not get it too soapy or whatnot, whatever you're working with. That's generally the guidelines that we use, especially if you're using stocks or something like that, you're using a drier ingredient in there. So that's my guideline I go with, I guess, in short. Looks like we're getting close here. I'm going to start searing off the steak as well.
Nice. So you got that cast iron searing hot right now.
It is.
Just full blast on the cast iron. And what are you putting in now?
We got a little bit of local Colorado Mills sunflower oil, which I actually started using at the restaurant as well.
Cool.
We just seasoned it salt, pepper. And again, like I said, I had this cast iron going for a little while here. So I think as we're talking about even searing beef, I get the question a lot too, like how you get color on it or whatnot. A, getting that pan really hot. B, using an oil that has a high smoke point. Peanut oils, canola oils. This is a sunflower oil, which has been great. And then from there, leaving it alone. Most people like to touch it on the grill or whatnot. Just leave it alone.
Yeah.
You'll be surprised on what you're gonna, the color you're gonna get out of it.
Yep.
And I think also having enough of a lubricant or oil in there is an important part too. Sometimes people don't use enough. And I don't know how many people can hear, but you don't have that dry, like, it's not, which means I have enough oil or lubricant in there. It could be butter, again. That's the difference.
Now, what's your thought with salting meat? I know there's a lot of information out there on kind of salting your meat, letting it sit for a half an hour, kind of letting some of that salinity soak into the meat beforehand. What's the advantage to doing that versus kind of a quick seasoning and a sear on the pan?
You're gonna penetrate the meat more, and you won't have to externally garnish with salt. I think even at this one, I'd probably still, as I slice it, because we did a quick one, you're gonna add a little bit of salt on there, which I think is fine, especially if you're using a finishing salt, which has like that minerality you're looking for just to finish, to add yet another layer like we were talking about. But I think if you're doing marinating or whatnot from there, I'm gonna lower this and kind of finish it here. If you're marinating overnight, you want to add a little bit of salt depending on what cut it is. It's a ribeye, you're doing something quick, it's already tender. If you're looking for something like a flank steak that has a little bit more firmness and grain to it, and you want to loosen it up, you're going to add that salt in to kind of tenderize, but also flavor. And there's a fine line there, as like I'm sure Chito knows, because I'm sure in the cuisine you're doing all the time, sometimes you're marinating a lot. And so that would be my, again, kind of black and white difference on why.
Gotcha.
Nice. Well, if you're listening or you're watching and you're thinking that it sounds and looks as delicious as it smells right now, we are going to put the recipe for Chef Chris's stout butter up on the Facebook page.
Yep.
So you too can take his steak tips and make your own stout butter.
Yep.
And if you've got any questions for the two chefs that we have in the house today, feel free to throw them up on Facebook, and we'll try to get to them before our hour is up.
Yeah. Yeah, when we're thinking about flavors, I mean, you just saw the steak get flipped over in the pan, and you see that bright kind of brown color on the meat, right? And that's
caramelization.
That's the caramelization, those Maillard reactions at work, kind of creating that rich, more roasty kind of cooked meat flavor.
Right. Which is super important for stout, right?
Correct.
Maillard reactions. I mean, we had Patrick on here 2 weeks ago talking about the 8-hour boil that Cerebral goes through in order to like generate all of those beautiful, rich Maillard reactions.
Right. And I think that's one reason why steak and stout work so well together, is because you have that kind of complementary flavor between the meat and between the beer, especially a higher ABV stout that's going to have a lot of that kind of rich Maillard reactions from the direct fired kettle too. And it goes back to the malt as well, right? They're getting those reactions from the brewing kettle, but then they're actually getting some of those 2 steps before that when you're roasting the malt, right? To make your chocolate malt or your black patent malt. So that's kind of a way that the flavors get layered into the beer, one from the base malt that you're using, and then also from the brewing process itself.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yep. Look at that. It looks perfect.
Oh, man.
It's probably not the first steak Chef Chris has
No,
seared up.
I would assume not. This is your first steak, right? The first one you've ever made?
Yeah.
Right here?
Yeah. You saw it here.
We do grill a lot at the restaurant. We do some on the flat top, especially our burgers and stuff too. I like that difference. I mean, you could probably talk to it and get a 50-50 on it, but I like that caramelization on the outside.
Yeah.
And one thing I was going to talk about is I'm kind of finishing it here. Sometimes you can finish it in the oven. I'm just going to let that residual heat take it over. I'll pull it out, and then just like we do at the restaurant, we rest all the steaks for 5 minutes.
Yep.
That lets the juices come back in. If you're slicing your steak of whatever variety and all those juices are coming out,
don't do it.
You haven't rested it long enough, so I want to make sure we give ourselves enough time. With a ribeye like this, I'm going to do more mid-rare, medium, maximum, depending on what we're looking for and what it is. But I always maintain, no matter what, if a guest wants it well done, by all means, that's going to make them happy at the end of the day. And that's how you do it, right?
But will it make you happy at the
Well,
end
it
of the
makes
day?
me. But again, that's the always thing I always say is like the server comes to me and says, but did they ask my opinion? That's the important part. If they ask my opinion, I will tell you. If not, it doesn't matter, right? So
let's say the same thing to breweries. If all you want to do is brew the beer that you like, brew it in your garage.
Yeah.
good. That's a good point.
Yeah, that's a good point.
So, well, maybe we were thinking about, juices and flavors going in, flavors going out. It's a good time to probably talk a little bit about what flavor is and how we're going to be tasting some of the things that we're going to be tasting here, hopefully in a few minutes.
Yeah, I think that's a good time to talk about it. So, flavor is this interesting thing, right? Flavor is made up of a couple of different components. Flavor is taste, but it's so much more than taste, right? Taste is the 5 taste receptors on your tongue. You have your sweet, sour, salty, bitter, and umami taste receptors on your tongue. But flavor is also mouthfeel, which can be something that's acidic, something that is carbonated like beer, kind of has a tingly sensation, something that's astringent like oversteeped tea has this drying sensation. And then the most important one, in my opinion, is the aroma, right? And anybody who's in this building right now will tell you how important aroma is to flavor, but your olfactory bulb in your nose has over 10 million different flavor receptors, and each one of those kind of picks up a specific compound. And so when you eat something or when you drink something, your perception of flavor is really a combination of those 3 things. It's a combination of what you're smelling, what you're tasting, and then the kind of the mouthfeel experience that's also happening at the same time. So it's pretty complicated. I mean, anytime you've ever eaten something or drank something and plugged your nose, it's pretty apparent how important aroma is to flavor, right?
Yeah.
So.
Well, one thing I think that plays in there too that I don't feel like we get to talk about is sort of perception of what it is that you're about to eat or drink in our case.
Right.
I mean, I'm thinking about stouts. I mean, now with stouts, people are making red stouts and white stouts and all these different colors.
You guys just made a red and white stout.
We just did a red velvet white stout with chocolate and coffee and red velvet. And
wow, that sounds interesting.
It was super tasty, but it's fun to play with people's expectations when it comes to flavor, right? Because people don't see a light yellow to pinkish beer and expect to get chocolate and coffee out of it.
Right.
And so I think that's something that I was trying to think of where that might go, and I suppose in that flavor trilogy we were just talking about.
Yeah, well, it's kind of like maybe the psychological aspect of it is something separate from those other 3 things. But I mean, chefs do this a lot too. There's a big food trend right now with using activated charcoal in food items, or squid ink to make things jet black, right? Yeah. And that kind of changes the flavor perception that people expect when they get that dish, right?
Correct. So I mean, one of the things that we're doing, I know we've talked about even for brewing, is not necessarily color-wise, but it's a habanada pepper, which is a habanero with no spice, right? So you think habanero, people are like, I don't know, and especially in a beer, do I like spicy beer? But you get all the profiles of what a habanero is minus the spice, which is what makes that prominent. And so I think that's going to be an exciting thing that we're going to grow this year at the farm and hopefully make some beers from.
Yeah.
But also I believe it's called a butterfly pea edible flower, and from my knowledge, it's the only blue that happens in nature. We're going to be growing that as well this year. And a couple of my chefs were looking at it like, I really want you to grow it and check it out. And I'm like, okay, so I did some reading on it. We're going to grow it. It seems like it might be a finicky thing to grow. But again, that's the type of thing where, I don't know, what am I going to make with that blue? I don't know yet. I have to grow it well first. And then,
Step 1,
and then what's it?
Get the
and then what I'm going
seeds
to
in the
turn it
ground.
into, because people are going to think blue food. So you got to be careful how you
sell
you're
it.
going to adapt that into a menu, right? So.
Yeah.
It's like the grasshoppers on our menu this week.
Yeah.
Right.
We got our restaurant of the week. We have ceviche with grasshoppers.
Oh, okay.
Spicy grasshoppers.
Yeah, nice.
So make the little molcajete and grind up the grasshoppers, lime juice, little roasted garlic. It's pretty good.
I had some yesterday morning. It was breakfast ceviche. It was good. It was good.
And then on our steak we do grasshoppers, which I actually have some grasshoppers here if you guys want to try them.
I bet you they go well with stout.
I think we'd have to.
They're spicy.
Yeah.
If they're on the premise, I think we have to try them.
Absolutely. You got to bring them out.
Yeah, let me go.
Yeah, but going back to the butterfly pea blossom for a little while, that is a really interesting ingredient. We attempted to use it in a beer.
Okay.
a couple years ago at this point. I know there are a couple other brewers out there who have done it. A really talented brewer who is the head brewer over at Jagged Mountain right now, Alyssa Thorpe, and she made a really cool version of it last year when she was working at Lone Tree. And the tricky thing is to get the pH of what you're using it in correct. Otherwise, it ends up as this kind of murky gray colored thing.
Kind of like you would with green, kind of turns it.
Yeah,
Okay.
and it's really hard to get the concentration high enough so you can get that bright blue color without getting, I mean, if you taste it on its own, it tastes like soggy microwave peas. Like, it's terrible. So if you put too much in to get the color, then all of a sudden you're eating a microwave bag of peas, and that's just not good for anyone. But getting the pH just right has a lot to do with getting the color just right. I'd be interested to see how to incorporate into food items.
Yeah.
But it's a totally weird ingredient, but a pretty fun one to mess around with.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
So like this one, this is a pretty weird food item.
These are
Oh,
great.
yeah.
So that's what we got.
We need to
I'm
get
gonna
these
put
on
this up
camera.
here, yeah.
Yeah.
So for those of you who are interested in the more exotic food items, these are grasshoppers.
I actually had a brewer come to me during GABF in 2017. He has a brewery in just on the Mexican side of the border from El Paso, and he was brewing beers
With insects?
With insects in the mash tun, like
Oh, wow.
hundreds of pounds of crickets and
Yeah.
things in the mash tun.
Hey, Chito, open up.
All right.
So that's hundreds of pounds of crickets in the mash tun, huh?
Yeah,
Give us a
crickets.
try.
Yeah, crickets in the mash tun.
Yeah.
Good.
So, but this is a good example of that psychological perspective that we were, because like
Right.
the chefs are
It's
just
a
like
little salty,
pop it in their
crunchy.
mouth, and I'm like, we should probably go to someone else's
spicy
face
too,
while I
that's
try
good.
this.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, a little roasted garlic and
Cheers.
Cheers.
automotive.
To crickets, grasshoppers.
I definitely like the spice on that.
Yeah,
I like
right?
spicy things. That's good.
Wow.
I remember one of my guys when I was in Portland, he brought in ants.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Like, and that was same
The
profile.
flying ants, yeah.
Yeah, that type of thing.
Yeah.
Well, they're this interesting. I mean, insects are really high in protein compared to how much water you have to use to raise them, right? So they're kind of seen as this good alternative protein source if you compare them to like beef or chicken.
Absolutely.
So it'd be interesting to see in 20 or 50 years if everybody's eating these guys.
Yeah. That's spicy.
It is spicy, yeah.
Lingering in the back of the throat.
Yeah. That's nice, though.
But it's a really cool flavor when you mix it with food and stuff, crunch, and then it just, kind of makes it interesting and fun for the guests.
Yeah.
Like when last night I had a couple ladies there. Oh my God, I just saw the crickets on TV and I just want to eat one and see what it tastes
Yeah.
like.
Nice.
So I'm out there and they loved it, dude.
Yeah. That's cool to get people excited about something that's like a little more adventurous, a little outside the box,
Yeah.
to be able to work on that.
Yeah. It's
Yeah.
good moose boosh.
What's that?
Moosh, moosh.
Before our steak. Yeah.
Use all the French terms. Today.
Yeah.
Sorry.
Going to use all the French I know today.
Well, our amuse bouche has been, those before the steak, and we have, I'm just waiting for the onions to cool down, and we'll be able to puree those because I don't want the butter to melt, so it's important to cool those down. I got a little bit more, and then, of course, our steak is resting, and then we'll be able to try some with the
Nice.
with the beer here. I'd
I'm
say
excited.
about 5 minutes, I'm going to be good to go.
Cool.
Excellent.
Well, we have some Guinness to pair, which is, we were talking about before the show started. I probably had more Guinness in the last month doing this show than I have in the last couple of years, but it's an awesome beer and it'll work really well with the steak.
Yeah.
And then we'll have dessert after that, right? Cool.
Should we pour some? Should I pour some?
Yeah. Let's get some beer.
Yeah, let's do that.
I opened these. I opened one too many, I think. But
Perfect. Well, we'll pour some beer.
I got to wash
In-
the grasshopper down.
Yeah.
I mean, it was delicious, but I got to wash it down.
it was good. I like the spice on there. It was good.
Yeah, it was really
Yeah.
good.
So we can put those in a beer now, too.
Want some cheese?
Yeah, we were talking the other day about like the pea flowers and like sort of beers of different colors, right? Because we were thinking about this red velvet stout and this sort of pinkish colored beer, and yeah, and that pea flower saison from Lone Tree was a really neat beer. I know hibiscus is something that's often used in like coloring
Yeah.
beers and give them like kind of
Jay, you want some?
like a pinkish hue. So it's like carrots. I've seen like some orangish beers. I think I'm
Yeah,
thinking
Ratio
about
does a really cool
Ratio
beer
is
with,
like
with
king of
carrots, the king of carrot flower,
Yeah.
elderflower and carrot saison. And it's awesome. Like I think, again, it's hard to strike that balance between vegetal flavors and beer, because beer is, it's typically not a savory beverage. I know you're running the 2020 campaign for mushroom beers, I believe, and other savory beers.
I love umami beers.
Umami beers.
We need more of them. There aren't enough
category.
umami beers.
Yeah. Do you guys have a bottle opener? How do we
I
get
do,
this?
yeah.
He
You have
did,
one?
yeah.
Sweet.
I think Andrew actually has a belt buckle.
Oh.
Yeah, I just use my bicep. It's all it's
Oh, nice.
There you go.
Yeah, lots of cool ingredients that kind of shift the perception of what can be in beer. And carrots are really sweet, right? Like carrots have a lot of sugar in them.
Specific ones do, yes.
Specific carrots?
Yes. Yeah. I grew one last year. It was called the Snowman. And it was white, and it didn't have as much sweetness, but it kind of was like minty parsnippy versus like a Nantes, which has that really orange flavor and that really, or orange color rather. Yeah. Orange, I don't think it's a flavor, and that really orange color and sweetness.
No, I think orange is probably a flavor. I mean, we all struggle with this, right?
orange.
I think it's
Crush,
I think
right?
Tic Tacs.
Yeah, Orange Crush.
Tic Tacs are. Well, no, orange is a fruit, the name of a fruit, and the name of a color, right? So orange is a flavor.
Yeah, but
and it's a color.
it's like always the challenge of like describing flavor, right? It's like, what does this mandarin orange taste like? Well, it's orange.
Yeah.
Like we just put the Y at the end of the word, and now it's a flavor.
Well, if we could all memorize the 10 million flavor receptors in our nose, then we could have a very specific chemical name for every single thing that we consume.
Yeah.
But that's probably not going
That's
to.
super advanced Cicerone level.
Yeah, that's the ultra grand
Grand
master.
poobah of Cicerone,
Yeah, there
I
you go.
think.
I like it. Yeah.
Nice. All right, so the onions are out.
Onions are out, they're cooled, so we got a nice little Cuisinart here going on here.
Nice.
Food processor. So we're going to add those guys in here.
So remind everyone what's in the onions. That's the stout, the onions that have been sweated down.
Correct, and a little bit of thyme, salt and pepper. Again, I don't want to put too much in there to, kind of make sure the stout comes out.
Right.
We used about 3 bottles of beer to about 2 cups of onions.
Yep.
Onions.
See how loud we can talk over the. Oh, it's
Yeah.
Oop, never used this one
I
before.
had a grilled onion beer actually.
Hmm.
Joe Wygan, the head brewer at 105 West down in Castle Rock, Colorado.
Yeah.
They did a little pilot batch that was like a grilled onion beer. It was actually pretty tasty.
I mean, onions are another one of those things that have a lot of like caramelized onions are so good and sweet and delicious. And was it in like what kind of beer was it?
This was an amber.
An amber?
Yeah, kind of a light amber, not too hoppy, mostly just showcasing the onions.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's really interesting. I think you'll probably see as adjunct heavy beers get a little more out there. You're going to see more of these traditionally savory food items go into beer. I mean, there's already been a fair number of mushroom beers out there. I know you're itching to make a mushroom beer.
Yeah, well, I just think again. I mean, thinking about beer as food, and I don't want to limit beer, and when it could, take on all of these umami flavors and some of these other like savory flavors.
Yeah.
I mean, that I think could be really interesting. I mean, mushrooms. I want to use mushrooms. I love mushrooms. You have to be careful using mushrooms, especially when you're heating and cooking mushrooms and consuming them. You have to make sure we're using the right mushrooms and preparing them in the right way and that sort of thing. But I'm excited for sort of savory beers. I don't know if it's a direction that stout will go in necessarily because you've got those kind of sweet roasted, like chocolatey coffee notes that are in the malt. But again, like we were talking earlier about pairing it with steak. Not that I'm not suggesting that we put steak in stout, but
A stout steak?
but a stout with steak, or
Yeah.
if not savory beers, then beers with savory food.
Right. So kind of along that beers with savory food vein, maybe we should talk a little bit about beer and food pairings and some of the thoughts behind traditionally kind of what flavors you're looking for and what our general roadmap. I think the thing with beer pairings is that it can be a little bit loose and it can be a little bit subjective. And I always tell people to try whatever you're saying you're going to pair, because on paper maybe it sounds awesome, but in reality it might not be. So the experimentation, you always find those weird things that you're like, I didn't think that would work, but man, that's pretty cool together.
Yeah.
So maybe while this is finishing up, we can just kind of talk about that a little bit, about the beer and food pairings.
I mean, typically, it's like thinking about pairing beer and food, something we got to do a lot this summer with the Modern Eater and their summer dinner series.
Yeah, that was a blast.
Yeah.
Man, I hope those Modern Eater guys do that again this year.
That would be awesome.
Yeah.
Yeah, sign me up. Anyway, but we think about it, pairing food, start with the 3 C's, right? Cut, contrast, or complement.
Right.
Right? So you can cut, so you can provide a flavor that sort of takes away the flavor of the food, right?
Kind of like resets your palate for the next bite.
Resets your palate. You can complement, right? If you've got lavender in a beer and lavender in the dish, right? You can sort of bring both of those up, or you can kind of contrast. I think of like a blue cheeseburger with like a really bitter IPA, right? And the bitterness in that IPA sort of contrasting.
Funky and bitter.
Funky, yeah. The funkiness. So that's sort of like generally where I start from. And so I think like with stout, we were talking about like people tend to go for the complement pairing.
Right. The dessert, the roasty chocolate flavors with the chocolate flavors of a dessert.
Even with the flan yesterday, I tried it and it was delicious. When I had a bite of the flan and then sip of your beer. Yeah, that was different.
Yeah,
and this is like a multi-layered flan. So there's chocolate on the bottom, or
chocolate cake on the bottom, and then flan on top of that.
Yeah,
cool.
Well, this is always too. You said something that reminded me like of the order when you of sort of trying these pairings is like we always encourage people to try the food first, especially with dessert, and then go for the beer, because all the carbonation in the beer is going to lift a lot of that flavor off your tongue, and you're going to actually be able to sort of taste both.
More,
taste more.
Yeah, and it kind of gets back into the aroma component of flavor, right? You want to use the CO2, which is going to come out of solution in the beer, to kind of pull all the volatile flavor compounds you can out of both the beer and the food out into your mouth, so that your olfactory receptors can pick those up and you'll experience them a little bit more.
All right, he's ready for the steak.
Oh, man.
Right. Gonna start slicing.
Nice. Wow. That looks delicious.
Oh, yeah.
So all I have to do to get you guys to cook for me regularly is become the president of an African.
Yeah, you got to work on that. Nice.
Juice is flowing.
Yeah, that looks great.
Just a little bit.
Nice.
Oh, that's sexy.
Man, that looks good.
Yeah. What's the salt finish? What's that designed to?
Like we talked about with, you're getting a lot of salt crust on the outside, but it's not going to penetrate the meat. It's a fairly thick piece of meat.
Yeah.
So just a little bit of extra salt on the top is going to really push it through. So
Pop
why don't
the
you guys
flavor.
come on over.
Let's do it.
Nice.
I got some forks here for you to try.
Here,
You want to bring it over there?
Move
Got
this
it.
way.
We're tethered to the microphones here.
I forgot about that. I'm the only one that's wireless and
Yeah,
free.
like a free man.
Run circles around this.
So what's your preferred doneness of steak?
For a ribeye, I'd say mid-rare.
Mid-rare.
I think that's where we're going. Sometimes, depending on the feed, and we talk about this at the restaurant too, if it's grass-fed, you generally have a leaner cut. You want to go a little bit higher because it can be a touch chewy. And if it has a little bit more fat, you're going to go a little bit lower rare, mid-rare. Now, that's only a guideline. Some people like their steak like they like it, right?
Sure.
Here you go.
Nice. Wow. So we all got Guinness in front of us too. We can see if we can taste the Guinness in both the butter and.
I thought you were going to go all in. That's what I figured. I can bring let me grab a steak knife. I had one over here.
All right.
I can see it.
just taste the butter.
some
and
of
We'll
the
just
butter.
go all in. There we go.
I see him over here now.
Butter's good.
See how many chewing noises we can get on the microphones.
Let's go. A little bit smaller piece there.
Just gonna go for it.
2 minutes of silence. Yeah.
Nobody talking.
Yeah, that is delicious. And that salt on top, it kind of brightens all the flavors up. And it just makes everything way more intense. It makes everything kind of pop out a lot more. Oh, man, that's good. Let's see if we can taste the Guinness in the butter here.
So good.
Yep. That's good stuff.
Nice.
That butter on the toast, man. That'd be perfect too.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
I love how simple things can be so good too, right? You don't have to have like fancy microgreens and reductions and all this stuff. It's, I mean, there's a bit of work that goes into the butter, but it's only a couple ingredients, right?
Agreed. Yeah, and that's the thing I like about it is it can be a quick, like you said, a quick thing. You can make a regular steak just interesting in that respect. Because if it's just you and your significant other or friends, sometimes you're like just want to eat, make it good, pair some beers, playing cards or whatever. I think it's perfect for that.
Yeah, that's delicious. And then when the Guinness behind it and that little bit of like residual salt on your tongue from that last little salting there really makes the beer, some of the flavors in the beer pop.
Yeah.
Complement that butter. That's tasty.
And I love how dry Guinness is too. We talked about this on the first show. People generally think about stouts as these big, heavy, full-bodied beers, and Guinness has like 125 calories. It's an extremely dry, easy drinking beer, and it kind of lets it really, when you pair the two together, it lets kind of the richer meat shine through. I think that's one thing we didn't really talk about with the pairings is you have the cutting, the complementing, and the contrasting from a flavor perspective, but you always want to think about matching the intensity of the food and the beer. Ideally, you don't want to overpower. You don't want to overpower one with the other. You don't want something where you have a really nice cut of meat and you're really just trying to enjoy the flavor that meat brings, and then get a 16% cinnamon sour cardamom IPA stout hybrid that's going to just totally dominate your palate.
Yeah, I think that's a good point because we've been talking a lot about pairings in terms of flavor, but it's also sort of matching intensity as well, and not burying one under the other.
Right.
But really, like Chito was saying, tasting them both together.
Dessert's ready, guys.
Oh, nice.
All right.
It's good.
I'm excited about this. I got a sweet tooth.
I'm gonna do a little puddle of stout and butter sauce.
So this is with the Guinness
caramel.
also?
Yeah.
This is with the Guinness. I'm just gonna pop that there.
So how is flan made?
Flan. Okay, so
I'm doing
this
it.
choco flan.
All right.
Yeah, go ahead.
I'm
Go ahead.
doing it. All right.
This choco flan, you mix it at the same time. When you put it in the baking mold, you mix it. You make a chocolate cake in the flan recipe, and you put it together in the pan. When it cooks, density of the flan drops, and the cake floats.
So they separate out.
Kind of separate out, kind of flip size.
Wow.
Yeah, first you do the chocolate cake on the bottom of the pan, and then the flan on top. And then when you bake it, it kind of flip size.
That's cool.
Huh.
I didn't know
That's
that.
cool.
Nice.
That's really cool. It tastes great.
All right. Let's try this.
Try the flan.
Oh, we got
Yeah, right, please.
sweet.
Clean forks.
Jay's doing dishes tonight, right?
That's
So
great.
we can
Pairs
just
really
use
well.
as many.
Like you said, there's like that. I don't know what you dry.
Yeah,
you said it. Like
taste it with the beer at
Yeah.
the same time.
Yeah. We're going to bust
Really
out some
cool.
of the chai milk stout too.
All
Because
right.
this is what we were tasting with it yesterday, right?
Yesterday, yeah.
So we will get some more glasses if we need them.
Sure. I'll pour one for you, brother.
That's good.
Do this here.
Oh, it smells so good.
Let's see. I'll grab us some glasses.
Okay.
You tell us about the chai milk stout.
Yeah, so the chai milk stout, it's kind of it's our flagship stout. It's got a nice kind of chocolatey malt profile to start off. It has lactose in it, which is what makes it a milk stout, so it has a little bit of body, a little bit of sweetness to it.
Okay.
And then we add chai tea spices to the milk stout later in the process. And as Andrew was kind of talking about earlier, a very small amount of spices go into this beer, but it's a pretty cardamom-heavy chai spice blend, and so it gets this kind of bright, fresh, kind of minty, almost like menthol sort of finish to it. And I love pairing it with dessert items because it's got the cinnamon, it's got the ginger, it's got some great dessert types of spices,
Yeah, it does. Wow.
and it just works really well with dessert items. And now we try.
But it's not as certainly heavy as I thought it was going to be.
Oh no,
too.
when you smell it and then you taste something
totally.
else.
Way different.
Yeah.
It's much lighter, actually.
That's what I like about it. Even though it is a milk stout, it's like pretty light in body. Like we bring this to a lot of events, and everyone's like, I'm not really a stout person. We're like, you got to try it because it's not going to be that like full-bodied, typical milk stout that you would think of.
I like that because I think, especially to me, the food equivalent is like blue cheese.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Some people are like, I don't know, I'm not a blue cheese person. It depends on where you're at on that spectrum.
Exactly.
And it's like, Roquefort versus Cabrales is like, what are you going for? You know what I mean? So I like that. Actually, I haven't thought about that when it comes to stouts because I think I'm normally like that. Like I enjoy a stout if I know I'm going to have only one generally because I feel like it's going to be heavier. But this is not that way at all. I like it a lot.
Yeah.
Very nice.
Yeah, they go really nicely together. I don't know if you said that already. I was getting glasses, but
I haven't.
Yeah,
I was
kind
just
of the
waiting for you
lightness
to
of the
say it. I'm not allowed to say it goes well. It's my own beer. I have to wait for other people
yeah,
to
it's
say
okay,
it.
I guess. No, it's delicious, and they go like the light. They're both kind of light, so it's that like matching intensity thing again that we were talking about with the food pairing. That I think works really well.
So kind of the mouthfeel matches pretty well.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So that brings us to the end of the hour, actually. So we're going to keep eating. And if you missed part of the episode, you feel free to check us out on Facebook. Again, we're going to get these recipes up on Facebook for you. If you feel inspired, we'd love to hear some of your favorite recipes that you enjoy pairing with beer. And we'll be back in March, a week from today.
1 week.
Next month, which is also next week. And we'll be sort of shifting gears to a new theme for the month.
Yes, a new theme for the month of March. We're going to be talking all about collaboration. Collaboration is something that happens a lot in the beer industry. It's a cool industry. I think a lot of people are like, wow, everyone's so like friendly. If you run out of hops, someone will help you out. If you need this, someone will help you out. And so it's really rooted into the community of the craft beer world, collaboration. But we're going to dig into it a little bit deeper and talk about some more nuanced aspects of collaboration as well.
Yeah. So we're getting a great lineup of guests together for you guys for the month of March. So we'll be back here next week at Studio Kitchen, Colorado, home of the Modern Eater Network at 2:30 on Wednesday.